Welcome you all to the Oyster River Cooperative School Board District Public Bond and Budget Hearing for January 14, 2015. This meeting will actually be two meetings back to back. We need a separate meeting for the bond, and then this will conclude that meeting, and then move right into the public presentation of the budget. So without further ado, I'll introduce Dr. Jim Morris, the superintendent, who will present the warrant article through the bond.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for giving up another evening to be with us. Last year, this was about the right percentage that we had compared to citizens and board members and employees. I think the first thing I should do is probably let the board introduce themselves. Sarah, would you mind starting?
Sarah Farwell. Maria Vornick. Denise Day.
Tom Newkirk.
Kenny Roebner.
Al Holland.
And Charlotte.
The way this will work this evening is I'll introduce our high school principal and athletic director, and they're going to do the meat of the presentation this evening. And then when they're done, the chair will open it up to questions. When those questions are exhausted this evening, he'll bring this part of the meeting to a close and then reopen the public hearing for the budget. The microphone has been set up over here at a podium for public questions, and the reason we'd ask you to use the podium is because it is being recorded, and if you try asking from your seats, we miss the question. Also, if you try asking for your seats, the people in the audience miss the question. So if you wouldn't mind this evening, when you do have questions, if you'd go to that podium, that would be pretty terrific. So the bond is on warrant article number 3. And just for the record, I'll read the warrant article into the meeting. Shall the district raise and appropriate the sum of $2 million for the renovation and construction of athletic fields and a track at Oyster River High School, and to authorize the issuance of not more than $1.7 million of bonds or notes to be paid over a 10-year period in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA Chapter 33, and to authorize the school board to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes, in addition to raise and appropriate the sum of $36,833 for the first year's principal and interest payment on the bonds or notes, and $300,000 to come from the expendable trust fund for this purpose. And of course, the school board is recommending this appropriation. So without further ado, I'd introduce our principal, Todd Allen, and our athletic director, Corey Parker, and they will talk to this issue, and when they're done, we'll open it up to question and answers. So Principal Allen.
Thank you, Dr. Morse. As Jim said, I'm Todd Allen, principal at the high school, and this is my athletic director, Corey Parker. I'll start out by just reading the explanation, which also appears on the ballot, so that everybody can hear the full explanation of the article. Warrant Article 3 asks Oyster River taxpayers to approve a bond of up to $1.7 million over a 10-year period to fund the cost for an athletic facility upgrade project at the high school. This project will include an all-weather track, an artificial turf rectangular playing field, and reconfigured baseball and softball fields. The estimated cost of this project is $2 million. An artificial turf field will improve drainage and allow for much greater utilization of the field. The reconfiguration of our baseball and softball fields will provide for multi-use play. Assuming the $1.7 million bond is approved by the voters, the remaining $300,000 for the project has been privately fundraised by Friends of Oyster River Track and will be used to fund the construction of the all-weather track. The board anticipates that additional fundraising will be possible to make enhancements to the project to include field lights and dugouts. I'd like to just start by offering a broad explanation of the project. One of the things I want to be very clear about is this is an athletic field upgrade proposal. A lot of times over the years when this is not a new issue to the district. In fact, I've been involved in this for 18 years, so it's been an issue that's been discussed in the district for a long time. A lot of times people refer to it as a track project, and I want to be very clear that it is much more than a track project. It is a comprehensive athletic facilities upgrade. In my opinion, and in the opinion of my athletic director and many of the other people involved in this project, this is as comprehensive and cost-effective way to provide this significant of an upgrade project as we can do, given the limitations we have to work with. And when I say the limitations we have to work with, we're really, I often refer to our athletic fields as a kind of a postage stamp, and we have to maximize its use within the area we have. We have over the years looked at the possibility of expansion and buying land in other neighboring neighborhoods or other areas, and it becomes cost prohibitive very, very quickly. And so we firmly believe this is our best thinking on how to go about resolving the athletic facilities deficiencies that our community and school district are facing. I would like to give you a little bit of history on kind of what has gotten us here. In 1998, the school district voted to create really two expendable trust funds. One that was called Expendable Trust Fund District Support, and another one that was called Expendable Trust Fund Private Donations. That Expendable Trust Fund was created at the request of the Friends of Oyster Track, who was an organization that started primarily for the purpose of trying to get a track obviously built as is shown in the name. But the intent really was to broaden that to include all athletic programs. So those funds were created in 1998, and over the years, there have been three different times where the district voted, and I don't have the exact sums, but it's sums ranging from $1,000 to $50,000 at various times to go into the expendable trust fund district support. In addition to that, there's been ongoing fundraising that has taken place by the Friends of Oyster Track, which has generated about $180,000 through private fundraising. So that's where the trust fund, which is that's where the 300,000 piece comes from. Other history to be aware of, as I said, this is not the first time that this issue has been brought before the voters. This is the third time, and actually I apologize, this slide is erroneous. It says that the three votes were 2005, 6, and 7. Just before the meeting, I looked at the warrant who provided that to me, and it's actually 2006, 7, and 8. So I have my three consecutive years wrong, so I do apologize for that. Nonetheless, it was voted that there were three different incarnations of this project that were brought before the voters, and for various reasons, the voters did not feel that it was appropriate at that time. So we continue to work that project. We continue to work the issue, and the issue has not gone away. Fortunately, in June of 2012, the Oyster School Board, in its wisdom, felt that it was time to kind of resume this issue and to begin talking about it again. And so Corey and I, once again, I guess you could say we called back together the band, if you will, and began talking about how can we move this forward. Last spring, also, the school board decided to use $40,000 of unexpended funds to get the engineering and design work done on this project, and then later on they also approved the use of $10,000 from the Expendable Trust Fund to kind of finalize the permitting process in this. And now we were discussing earlier this evening, we're this close, and I'm holding my fingers very close together, this close to getting the final permit, so the project is ready to go as soon as the voters say, go for it. So that's a little bit of the history. Now I'm going to turn it over to Corey, who's going to talk about our current athletic facilities and that condition.
Good evening, everyone. I tried to make this as easy as possible to explain, and by diagram I thought was the best way to show it. Obviously, as Todd alluded to, our footprint here is extremely small, given the amount of programs we offer here at the high school and offer in the middle school as well. Here at the high school in the fall, you can see the areas, and I've shaded them in different colors intentionally to show the multi-use of multiple different programs that are using and occupying our grounds. The long rectangles is our cross-country program that tries to do sprints. The blue rectangles is our soccer boys program. The tan rectangle or squares is the girls soccer program, and green is unified soccer, and yellow is field hockey. Throughout those programs, taking volleyball out of consideration, being the only indoor sport that we offer in the fall, and the golf team that resides at the Oaks in Somersworth, we have about 215 student athletes occupying this space every afternoon. it's a very busy fall, and I commend all our coaches who are very dedicated in providing a safe and an educational opportunity after school in whatever craft the student athlete may be a part of. But as you can see, we are overlapping in every avenue out there. With field hockey games happening, and where the tan square right by the baseball field is, which is our JV soccer field, there's about 3 feet between a field hockey game taking place and a JV soccer game taking place. And that doesn't take into account the varsity soccer game also happening on the far left side. I think our coaches and our facilities department here do a phenomenal job in providing what they do, but the blunt reality of it is there's no time, no regrowth process for these fields. At a typical high school, they'll have about 2 to 3 more fields. And so where you see the fall heavy usage, generally those fields will be dormant in the spring to get time to regrow, to reseed, to, much like at your home, if you're standing in the same sod of grass for a long period of time, it's going to mat itself down and eventually going to die. The roots are going to die. In the spring, as you can see with the rectangulars in the baseball field, we occupy all the exact same space. We use every inch of grass that we have behind the high school here for our sports programs. And again, I can't stress enough, because of that, it results in no growth of our facility and no growth for grass to come back each year. Because of that, it requires us to get outside the box and thinking. In this past year, one example, where over the summer, we expended $5,000 with our facilities department to trouble spots on the varsity soccer field and lacrosse field, which is the far to the west field, in areas of replacing literally dirt and taking the dirt out and putting sod down in probably 1,500 total square feet of an area. It worked for a large portion of the fall. However, at this point, I'm not confident that area is going to actually come back for our spring sports for lacrosse season this upcoming spring because of the fall overusage of that varsity soccer field. So I think it's phenomenal what they do with what we have, and the reality of the current state is we're making the best of what we are able to do. But when you want to see our enrollment numbers grow up, and you want to see our teams and opportunities continually grow, so that what we can provide to students here at Oyster River, we're really handcuffed to some extent because we don't have the grounds to literally put them on. So now we talk about the solution to this, and I know with the track portion, which Todd feels very prominent about, we're going to let him speak first.
But before I do, I just want to emphasize once again, the track part of this project is definitely what drew me into it. I'm a runner myself, and that was my passion. But I can't emphasize enough that this project is a comprehensive athletic facilities upgrade. Every sports team, starting with, that participates outdoors, and frankly, even some of the indoor teams will now have places where they can do their conditioning work as well. Every sports team will benefit from this, including physical education classes and community members who are looking for a safe place to walk, that kind of thing. So again, I'm going to talk about the track, but I want to keep it broad. I want people to realize it's a comprehensive athletic facilities upgrade project. As the slide indicates, obviously, to kind of back up, we're intending to have a all-weather track that has 8 straightaway lanes, 6 lanes all the way around. It's the size of a track that could allow us to host championship meets and so forth. So it would allow us to be able to use it for many things. But it also obviously provides us a spot where physical education classes can do their walking unit. Right now, many days, if you're in the neighborhood during school, you'll see middle school kids doing the bagel run, running on the streets. You'll see high school kids, also doing the reverse, because apparently they don't like to go in the same direction. But you'll see them out on the roads as well, doing fitness work. And obviously, this would provide us a place that would be a very safe place. We currently are spending about $4,000 a year renting track time at UNH. That includes both middle and high school. To just talk a little bit about that, I know one of the perceptions out there is that use of UNH facilities as a as a way to base a program is a potential option. I would point out that the UNH track facilities are only available at times that work for UNH, because obviously it's their program, it's their facility. Believe me, when we have our facility, I'll be the same way. That being said, to base a program, it's very challenging. So most of that $4,000 goes into buying practice time at night. 6:30 to 8 o'clock in the evening is a typical practice time. It's not time that's conducive to youth sports, particularly the younger kids. And the other thing I would point out is we have been unable to host home meets. Simply because in order to host a home meet, you have to know 6 months in advance, because that's when scheduling is getting done, when the facility is going to be available. And typically the way it works with UNH is, well, yeah, if it's available, we'll let you use it, but they don't let us book it way in advance because they're trying to keep it available for their programs. So just a little explanation on the use of that $4,000. Obviously, as I said, it's an opportunity to host home track meets. When we started this effort, 1998, I remember standing in front of a group we brought together all of the kids in the track programs in both the middle school and the high school over at the middle school gym. And I remember standing there saying, and one day when you graduate from high school, you're going to run on this facility. Well, that was 18 years ago, and most of the kids that are graduating weren't born yet. So I kind of point that out, that I didn't mean to lie to them. So anyway, so clearly it's an opportunity to host home track meets, and by the way, we have a fabulously successful track program starting at the Oyster Youth Association level, middle school and high school. Again, as I mentioned, this is the kind of facility that would allow even non-track teams to be able to utilize it. Certainly our ski team does running as part of their training. It would allow them to have a safe place to work out. Pretty much any team that involves aerobic exercise is going to be out doing activity that would benefit it. In addition to that, as I've said, community use would be something that this would really value. And again, Oyster Youth Association is something that one of the things that we would like to be able to do with outdoor sports is have a similar relationship with ORYA that we have with indoor sports. Our gym here at the high school is, when it's not being used for high school or school district events, it's used continuously by Oyster Youth Association. So there's dozens and dozens and dozens and frankly hundreds of kids that are using it on a regular basis. It would be wonderful to also have that level of usage on an outdoor facility, which we can't do now because obviously we have to have the grass grow, and it takes away from that. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Parker, who's going to talk a little bit about the turf field.
So the other component over the existing soccer field and inside the track would be a synthetic artificial turf field, which, if you're familiar with UNH's growth over the handful of years, or any collegiate sport team, if you watch them on TV, a lot of the trend is to go to a synthetic turf field. The reality of this surface is that it leaves no doubt from a consistent training environment. And what I mean by that is they're so well done, the enhancement of the technology is so exact that you don't have to worry about ruts, you don't have to worry about cleat marks, you don't get the typical divots that you may see on a grass field or in a backyard. These fields are so sustainable that you can literally use them 24/7. And that's certainly the appeal to them, although there is a large price tag on the initial benefit of it. The average turf field life right now is between 12 to 15 years before expiration of replacing the carpet. That is simply just the top of the carpet. Everything else stays intact. And a large chunk of the cost is associated to the drainage underneath it. And so if you're not familiar with an artificial turf field, or if you watch UNH in the playoffs, they can play through heavy rain. They can play through enormously, snow. You can plow these fields. Again, it goes back to the water is able to seep through a turf field so quickly into the drainage below that it provides you a safe field, minus the actual temperature in the air, that you can provide and say it's safe for the kids that are participating on there. It obviously, as Todd alluded to, it provides a similar experience to the youth programs and to the middle school teams that we currently don't have. Our current state with our high school field is we shut it down the last lacrosse game of the year, right around Memorial Day, in hopes of keeping and preserving the grass that we do have and growing new grass until the first actual soccer game. It is troublesome to tell our soccer coaches in the fall that you cannot play or practice on your field until your first game. It kind of takes away the home field advantage, if you will, because the first day we walk on is the same day our opponent's walking on it. And again, these are not concerns with a turf field because you're able to use it 24/7. And that allows us as a district to really open up any opportunity, any event, community involvement, classroom time, middle school physical education classes to come down and utilize this facility, because much like a track, it's a consistent surface that you don't have those concerns that you have with a grass field. Again, it puts us in a scenario where we are not necessarily stressed if looking for expansion of any of our current teams. A good example of that is girls reserve soccer. Our numbers ballooned 2 years ago, which was fabulous. And we were able to have a quasi girls reserve soccer team, or a large JV team, if you will. The reality of that is we inherited 18 more kids playing girls soccer that year, but we had to make it fit within our current environment of where we have grass. And so, although they shared the softball field, they couldn't really use the dirt part of the softball field. By having a turf field, you don't have those same concerns about not having grass, not having a safe play, not having an area that you can truly be confident it's going to be an enjoyable experience and a safe experience for the kids. When it's a grass field, that concern, or excuse me, a turf field, that concern goes away. So the reality of PE class being out there from 7:30 in the morning to 2:30 every single day, and then teams being out there from 2:30 to dark every day, is the same experience, and the value of that turf is the same whether you used it or not. And so for PE classes to plan, for ORYA to work with the high school and the middle school, it's a tremendous advantage to be able to know that you're having a safe facility for your kids to participate on. If you notice at the playoff level of the NHIAA in the last couple of years, they've moved all the higher level tournament games to turf fields. This year they moved to UNH with football, Southern New Hampshire University also in Laconia, who just recently put a turf field in at their high school. They are now hosting semifinals and state championships as well. And I think it's carried across the country, and New Hampshire's on board now to also appreciate the fact that playing on those surfaces is truly the safest environment to play, and as well as the most consistent for play actuality. If you think about late October or maybe early April, there's a very good chance the ground is still very frozen around here. And so running and trapping a soccer ball and falling on your head is a reality. And in some cases going into November with tournament games, the reality of the field and how hard the field is when you take into consideration head injuries or falling hard on concrete rather than falling on something softer, the bodily injuries that can come from that is a concern. And the beauty of the turf fields is within the turf, they have crumb rubbers, which essentially weighs down the field. But because of that, it creates a padding that is much more conducive to less head injuries, less blows to the body, if you will, when you fall in that, and less chances of freezing as well when you get in the winter months. So with the turf field, the drainage is a key component, and it's refreshing. I've been lucky enough to be a part of 2 of these projects. It's refreshing to kind of hear about this when we spoke at the town council in Durham on Monday evening, the concern of the environmental component with these turf fields. The reality of it, and we're excited to hear tonight from Ty and Bond that alteration permits have come back from the state, which takes into consideration the quality and the quantity of water that this field would take on and where the water would go. Because Route 4, was built with the debris moving to our fields in the 60s, I believe, right? In the 60s, it created not a conducive environment for growth of soil. And so what's happened over that time is the fields continually get harder and harder and more compact, which obviously becomes an issue with drainage when water comes into play. The nice thing of turf fields is underneath these fields, there's stone crush, there's stone dust, and then there's piping going right down the center of the field that will alleviate all this water and properly store it underneath the field, similar to a well, and then drain off into Beards Creek. In my 4 years of being here, and then I know talking with Todd and talking with the engineers, this would be the first time they could confidently say, we have control of water coming off this property. And a perfect example is if you look out there in 2 months, or well, hopefully 2 months, maybe 3 months when things start to thaw, or late in the fall when you see heavy rains and you see the fields and it's just holding on top of the surface is what's happening with the water. Again, those concerns go away when you have a turf field because a large part of the cost is the underlay drainage product and materials that takes that water and alleviates a lot of those concerns. And I know Todd wants to talk about the nitrates and the fertilization process, which is another key component to a turf field.
You know, one of the questions that's come up, in fact, it came up at the Durham Town Council Monday night, was have we really begun to consider the environmental impact, and in particular working with the town of Durham, the Durham town engineer, to make sure that these things are happening. And I first of all, I want to just say we absolutely have been doing that. Well, one of the issues that is not a high school caused issue, but it is an issue that's of the environment locally, is nitrates caused by use of fertilizers in the runoff getting into Beards Creek. And one of the things that has been being documented for the last few years is an increase in that over time. And certainly we use, as Corey has described, to keep grass growing, there's fertilizers used and so forth. And again, we are a part of that, and we are a part of the nitrates that run off into the creek. One of the things that we would gain by this turf field would be, number one, a dramatic reduction in the amount of fertilizer we have to use because turf does not require fertilizer. And on top of that, as Corey explained, the drainage work that goes on would, in a sense, work as a filtration for what there was, and certainly substantially reduce the nitrates that might flow into Beards Creek and elsewhere as a result of activity at the high school. Clearly we can't do anything about whether the condo unit up the road is using fertilizers, but the part that we control, we would have an awful lot more control. And as Corey points out, I mean, that is something that it would be nice to be able to say with a certain level of confidence that yes, we have identified that as something that we can have an impact on. It's a very positive impact. The other thing which I think is important to keep in mind is during the season when we're using the varsity field, we're having to mow twice a week to keep the field at the grass level that it's at. It takes about an hour and a half. We estimate it's about, how many gallons of gas? I believe it was about 180 gallons of gasoline being burned over the course of that time. Obviously, on top of that, there's equipment used to line the fields, and then obviously fertilizers. All of that would would no longer be an impact. So it's just, that's to me an important thing to think about, is this, because I think a lot of people look at, or I shouldn't say a lot of people, one of the perceptions I have heard is that this turf field might have a negative environmental impact. I would say with confidence that I think compared to what we are currently doing, this is a dramatic improvement on environmental impact, and for a variety of reasons we just discussed. I want to turn it back to Corey.
And so the other component, the other side of our facility that we're going to be really embracing in this as well, which I believe is just as much need as a significant facelift, is the reconfiguration of our current baseball and softball fields. To make the track and the turf field work, obviously it needs us to shift some of our triangles, if you will, with baseball, or diamonds I should say, that we currently have with our baseball and softball field. This is a good problem to have. If you've been here in the spring, or if you've been out there in the fall and you see how our setup is, The way our baseball field is currently positioned, it's actually at a huge disadvantage, not only from a solar standpoint because the sun sets right behind home plate, which creates a serious issue if you're trying to play baseball, but from a practicality of how much land we truly have for athletics. To put the diamond of a baseball field, which is generally an area you can't utilize for other sports, pretty much in the middle of the property, really hinders us maximizing our greenery space for all our teams. If you recall that first slide where I pretty much had everything shaded up there, that one, yeah. So, thanks Todd. If you notice, obviously the area that conveniently I didn't have a square over is pretty much in the middle of our grass, in the middle of the entire plot of land. By having that, again, you really put a hindrance on being able to maximize your whole property out there. And so one of the great parts about this project and the design of it, and by putting the track where it is in the soccer field, we're able to pivot our baseball and softball fields to essentially the corners of the property. And by doing that, we are minimizing how much area of dirt, which ideally is not an ideal surface for any other sport minus baseball and softball, so that it's going to be least impactful to all our other programs and for participation. Because keep in mind, we put the rectangles on the right side of the track up there for field hockey and soccer for practice facilities just because we have a turf field doesn't mean we're not going to still utilize every inch we can for a practice environment with all our teams. And by putting those in the corners, again, you are maximizing that green space in the middle. Although we have the outline of an outfield, if you will, an outfield fence, both those fields, the softball and baseball, wouldn't be fenced. So there wouldn't be a permanent structure of a fencing up there so that soccer and field hockey and the majority of our programs can still use that green space between the two. In our current environment, the softball field is right down the line of our baseball field. And so if you follow first base and you go right down, you essentially butt right into third base of our softball field. In my opinion, that is not the safest option to have for sports because on many occasions, a ball hit in the baseball field is now interfering with the softball field, or a foul ball hit in softball is now interfering with the baseball field. By putting them essentially as far away from each other as possible, home faces facing each other, the only immediate risk you have for balls flying into each other's area is home runs of 100 feet more than anything that will be hit in softball and about 85 feet longer than what Fenway Park is in center field. So the reality of it is you're really minimizing the potential of that. You also are now creating an environment where you can play a baseball game and have a lacrosse game or have a track meet happening at the same time. Again, where our practice field is, which is our varsity field, and where home plate currently resides is with foul balls immediately going over the back, they are falling on our lacrosse field. And so because of that, we are forced to not allow teams to play on the same day. So if baseball is playing on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, lacrosse is going on Tuesdays, Thursdays. And that really puts us in a situation where we pray for no rain, which everyone living in New England, my prayers are never answered, unfortunately, because we have a game scheduled every single day of the calendar once the snow finally melts until the end of the season, right around Memorial Day. And it ends up happening where we end up having to have a lot of Saturday events when we get rainouts, or what Todd alluded to, when we do get rainouts, we have to rent over at UNH approximately $3,000 a year for turf rentals because, again, our facility can't handle it. So I think baseball and softball are really something to think about, as well as all our programs, because by reconfiguring these fields, we are also putting the ground the way it should be. And by what I mean by that is there hasn't been enough maintenance or enough appreciation over the years to make sure that our current baseball outfield, our current field hockey field is actually level. And if you've been able to go out there, the ongoing joke with a lot of field hockey teams that come play us is when they're playing the first half, they're playing in a swale, because that entire half of the field has a natural swale into it that obviously would go away with this. So by getting a turf field, by getting a track, by reconfiguration, baseball and softball, we're also putting the whole plane of property to what I consider a true environment. And so that will, again, benefit every team every day. Not just the teams that are getting on the track, not just the teams that are getting on the turf field. Every single day, I can say without a doubt, our environment for practices and games is a better experience than what it would have been last year. And so I think that's important to know, and I know Todd keeps harping on it, is this isn't just one team. This isn't just a track. Although we don't currently have a track, that is a key component of this, sure. But we don't currently have a varsity soccer field, in my opinion. We don't currently have a varsity lacrosse field, in my opinion. And I don't think we have an adequate varsity field hockey field. By doing this project, we are now creating an environment for every single outdoor team that calls this facility home, one that they can be proud of. And I think it's an affordable project at this point. I think the taxpayers, the Fort Foundation, Todd and myself, and people behind this project appreciate the cost associated to it. And I think the time is now to tell these students that we truly are ready.
Great. Okay, so I just want to kind of run through the timeline on this project, just to give you an idea of kind of where things stand. Obviously, in last month, the school board finalized the bond proposal, which you just saw. In fact, we just reported earlier that we're very, very close to getting the final permit, which we expect to get in the next couple of days. So everything is in order. So all the necessary permits should be in place very, very shortly. Really, the next step is obviously the deliberative session February 3rd, and then the vote on March 10th. Assuming the vote were to be a positive one, and we did get the 60% majority that we need to approve a bond, assuming, as Corey pointed out, the weather gods are in our favor, which obviously we can't count on that, we would be hopefully breaking ground in April, with the idea that by early October we would have the opportunity to host our first home soccer game, field hockey game, etc. So it would be a very, very quick turnaround to be able to actually be, within this calendar year, be on our field utilizing it as has been described. Kind of the last piece, which I'll talk about, is kind of what is the cost factor here. Obviously, you've heard the total cost of this project is $2 million, with $1.7 million of that coming from a bond. $300,000 of that has been raised elsewhere. What does that mean to the taxpayer? Year one is really the smallest impact. So in the first year, we would have a very small impact because you're only making a partial interest payment in the first year. It would mean 2 cents on the thousand in town of Durham to the tax rate, 3 cents in Lee, and 3 cents in Madbury. Year two is really the largest cost impact, and from that year on, it gradually goes down, but at its highest impact, it would be 14 cents on the thousand in Durham, 18 cents on the thousand in Lee, and 15 cents on the thousand in Madbury. So that's the tax impact. And then the last thing I would say, and before we open it up for questions, is we have created a website called orbobcats.com, which is all things to do with the Athletic Fields project. So virtually anything we've talked about here tonight, the research on a variety of things related to environmental issues, whatever is on there, in addition to the longer version of this talk we did back in December, which didn't get a big turnout, but you can watch it if you have an hour of time to devote to it. So I would be happy to take questions at this point.
Just come up to the podium.
Hi, I'm Dean Rubine from Lake. Thanks for the presentation. I had a few questions. You guys on the slide have mentioned revenue possibility. If there's any idea to get an estimate on what you think that might bring in, I'd love to hear it. There seem to be inconsistent numbers on the UNH cost. Is it over 3,000 or over 4,000? Two papers seem to have different numbers. And also, can you guys describe what happens to the kids during the construction?
I'm going to start with your second question, if you don't mind. The $4,000 was what we pay to UNH for track rentals. The $3,000 is what we pay annually for turf rentals. So it's a combined number. So the total that we're spending on rentals is $7,000. So that's what that number is. Actually, Dean, could you I got so excited about answering your second question, I forgot your first one.
The first one was
revenue, thank you. We actually are hesitant to jump into trying to attach a number to a revenue stream. I think it's very safe to assume that there will be revenue opportunities. I'll be very honest with you. I hope that this project is used as much as possible by local community groups that are taxpayers of the community, and they'll get tremendous benefit out of it. So in an ideal world, they'd be using it all the time, and we might not have opportunity for that. That being said, there are activities that definitely are things we've talked with people about. I mean, certainly, even though UNH has multiple turf fields over there, they still have need for more athletic field space, and they've already spoken to us, particularly softball fields and that kind of stuff they like to use. So certainly that's a possibility. Certainly, having a stadium that draws people together, there's a significant potential for concession revenue, but again, we don't want to attach a number to that because it's a very difficult thing to project. I think it's very safe to assume there will be a revenue stream, but I think both Corey and I feel it's just not something that we would be willing to put an estimate to. And I'll let you talk about the third question.
Yeah, the third one was a great one. Thank you for asking. Is the construction timeframe, which I feel is a short window in polling students and talking about this project to them. They appreciate it because I think they see big picture and the end goal. The reality of it is, since this last time this project has been taken to vote, the ORYA and the local 3 towns have done a phenomenal job building up some of their facilities. And that's not to say these facilities could be long-term options for us. Having said that, and working with ORYA representatives, we feel very confident they're willing to work with us to have homes like Little River Park for baseball in the short term, and Little River Park rectangular field, which is full length regulation size field for lacrosse and soccer options, as well as obviously our middle school field is still one that we would take into consideration. So in the short term, we feel confident we'd be able to provide home environments, safe environments, and work in with the transportation bus route schedules, as we've done that in the past with Little River Park and Woodridge for tennis, as well as people incorporating getting on just average bus routes that are already taking place so that there's not larger expenses.
Good evening. I'm Karen Larson. I live in Madbury, and I actually don't have a question. I just wanted to speak in favor of the project. And I had a lot of notes here, but Mr. Allen and Mr. Parker addressed all of the advantages so well that I don't feel like we need to, say all the same things again. But what I would like to point out is that over the years there have been a lot of proposals for athletic fields that haven't worked out, and I don't know where this board stands as far as recommending or not recommending this warrant, but I would hope that you would, and I'm guessing you will. So I'm thinking for the people at home who are watching, wondering, should I spend money on this? I would like to encourage everybody to consider this. Yes, definitely, please vote for this. And whether you have preschoolers, whether you have middle schoolers, elementary kids, high school, or whether you're retired, it will benefit everyone. I mean, fitness is so important. We talk about it all the time. It's something we all believe in. I mean, I don't think anyone could dispute that. It's something that is going to give our high school a great sense of pride to finally have stadium seating and all the things that, in my opinion, a high school should have, a high school of our caliber and a community of our caliber. So I think it's wonderful that we finally have the right project in the right place with a reasonable amount of money. So I think it's just terrific. I commend everybody, and thank you so much for all your work. The other thing I want to point out, I know it's a comprehensive athletic fields project, but the track itself is a really wonderful piece of that. From my observations at cross-country and track meets, anyone who's ever been to one knows that every competitor is important. We have kids at the high school who are ranked nationally. ranked within the New England region and ranked in the state. We also have kids who come in practically last. And every one of those competitors receives a hearty applause and an absolutely heartwarming finish every time, no matter what they're competing in. And to me, this is a sport where everyone can be a great success. Soccer, not everyone. You know, all of these other sports have their wonderful, and my kids compete in many sports, so I'm not biased by just the track, but I do want to say, you know, if you have kids at home and they're younger, these are wonderful sports for everybody. So thank you for all your hard work, and I hope that this does pass. I'm certainly going to vote for it.
Could I just point out that the board has recommended approval of this?
Good evening. My name is Henry Smith. I live in Durham. I'd like to commend the board for your very consistent hard work promoting the educational enterprise across the Oyster River School District. Very important. I know you do this for the money, but still, I commend you in any case, you know. As a teacher, I strongly affirm and support education. My neighbor is a teacher in the middle school, and he's very good. He's been around a while. So I strongly support a modest increase in salaries for teachers, a modest increase in health, medical and dental benefits, and even a modest increase in the salaries of school bus drivers. As a former school bus driver, into winter, in a previous life up in northern Vermont, I think this is a real challenge. That's really important, I believe. However, having said that, you've already noted, and I remember this, that for 3 consecutive years, this question failed and Durham voters. And I voted against that, and I stand opposed to using public funds to upgrade the athletic facilities. I believe sports and athletics are very important, and especially certain sports in my estimation. But I am not in favor of using taxpayer funds for upgrading athletic facilities. A few years ago, Durham had the 5th highest tax rate in the state. Not sure where we stand now, but it's still a heavy burden on the heads of us who live in Durham and pay this twice a year. So I would strongly oppose doing this with public funds, and hope that this, quite honestly, does not pass. And thank you for all of your hard work.
My name is Joyce Williams. My husband and I live in Durham. We've only been here about 4.5 years, and so I'm still learning the town. We have no children in the school system. I'm a big supporter of the schools, and so is my husband. He's a former teacher. We believe in our hearts that the #1 responsibility of the town is to educate its young people with excellent education, because that's the future of the town. My concern is about the growing population in this area. I'm not sure how it's going to grow one way or the other, just looking at the growth of the area around the university. So I'm wondering what sorts of population projections that you have in order to know how many kids will be coming into this school in the future. It looks to me like you've got a very tiny space that you're working with, and how many more kids can you support on the fields of this very tiny space before now you're looking for more space as opposed to better facilities. So if a lot of money is going into this small space, when are we going to expect the need to have to go out of that space and therefore tear down what we've already built in order to get the space to cover the kids that I would expect to move into this area, especially since you have the consolidated system and you're working with 2 other schools as well as the Durham School. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The school board has a long-range planning committee that works on doing our projections for enrollment. And the enrollment over a 10-year period is projected to decline slightly. In the immediate future, in the next 4 years, it's actually very stable. This project actually is a project that would allow the district not to look for additional land for fields because it maximizes the current configuration of the property we have. So I think between the projections and the way that this project is outlined, we will be in good shape for years to come.
Hi everybody, Jason Senior from Durham. I'm curious, I'd be interested to know if in the history of this question over time, if there's been any discussion with the town of Durham and partnering and with ORYA or other town recreation groups to construct fields jointly. I'm on the town recreation committee here in Durham. One of my concerns, and this topic comes up frequently, that Durham especially is in need of playing fields. And one of my concerns is we could spend $1.7 million here to reconfigure the high school facilities and still perhaps not meet the needs of their youth sports in the area for scheduler reasons, for size reasons or whatever. And then we might see on the town side this item come up again for Oyster River Youth Association and that kind of thing. So in the history, has that ever been explored?
Actually, I've served on multiple athletic fields. In fact, David Taylor and I served on multiple of them together. Multiple committees that brought together, Lee Rec, Durham Rec, Oyster Youth Association, Madbury Rec, with the intent of looking at the issue in a comprehensive way and developing a plan. We developed a master plan probably 10 years ago that really began to look at what we did. And I think a lot of the development that the various towns have taken sort of was an outgrowth of all those discussions. So, now granted, clearly those we are dealing with 3 separate towns with 3 separate legislative bodies and governance. But in all of the communities have kind of simultaneously be looking at how we can expand that. I mean, certainly, as Corey pointed out, we do have very cooperative relationships with the various towns. I mean, our tennis team plays tennis matches out at Woodridge Field. Our JV baseball team frequently plays their home games out at Little River Park now. They have a wonderful baseball field out there. And certain practices, we periodically have need to find an alternative site for a practice, whether it's using Tibbetts Field in Madbury or Woodridge Field or wherever. So there is a very cooperative relationship. When it comes to the financial side of the equation, like cooperating on a project of this size, really the school district is the entity that really brings the 3 towns together. And so this would be an investment that I would like to think would be perceived by all 3 towns as being of equal value to all 3 towns, because it's benefiting all of the students of our school system and our community. I don't know if I've actually answered your question in a direct manner, but the conversation has been there. But like many things on a political level, it's very challenging to get all of the stakeholders to agree on what the exact nature of the plan is. I will tell you, all the conversations we've had with the various rec commissions and ORYA and so forth, they like this project. We're getting lots of positive feedback because they see it as a major benefit for them. And frankly, the other way that you could look at it is, in many cases, the fees that we pay to ORYA for our kids to participate might be able to be reduced by having this facility available, because there'll be potentially minimal cost associated with the use of it. So I don't know if that does that answer your question, Jason?
Hi, my name is Kathy O'Brien, and I am here just to lend my support to the proposed facilities upgrade. Specifically, I just wanted to very, very briefly speak to the track project, which is near and dear to my heart as well. Some of you may know me in my running background, and that I had the honor to represent the United States of America into Olympic Games in 1988 and 1992 as a track and field athlete, Olympic marathoner. I grew up in Dover, small community next door, and what that community had was similar to what this community has: a wonderful, supportive community, great athletic department, wonderful team, and fantastic coaches. What they had that we don't have was a track they didn't have, they had a track for us to train on. I grew up having a track I could run on whenever I wanted to, train on it whenever I needed to, train side by side with other athletes from other teams, with community members. My coach discovered me on that track. He came up to me when I was running with my dad and said, you know, you have a lot of talent. You have the ability to, you know, do great things. I believed him, and that's where it all started for me. Not everyone is going to be an Olympic marathoner, an Olympic track and field athlete, obviously, but that's where it begins. It begins, you know, at your high school, being able to make the times to qualify for your state meet. You need a track to do that, to be able to make the times to place in your state meet, to go on to regionals, nationals. And by not having the facilities for athletes, who knows how many dreams maybe will never be realized. So for a town as great as Durham, you know, Lee and Madbury, for a school district as great as Oyster River and a community, I think we really need to have that for our kids. I really do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Professor Newkirk, Jim, Board, and thank you for your indulgence. I wanted to support the project also.
Identify yourself, Bill.
William Paul, I'm sorry, Tom. Believe me, boy, some people don't know who I am.
It's a formality, Bill.
Originally, I didn't mean to start out this way, but I think I should. Through circumstances, I've spent a couple of days over at Superior Court this last week. I'll probably testify. All the cases over there that are going on right now are youth cases. They switched courtrooms on me between morning and afternoon, and I went into the courtroom on the left, and there are all these kids in there. And I didn't understand what that was at first, and I realized I was in the wrong courtroom. It was drug diversion. And these kids, it was like the worst study hall you could imagine in court. They had no idea why they were there, how much trouble they were in, what was going on. They didn't have a clue. The other two cases, the one I was there for was the arson case next door to me, which I've been told by the prosecutor I'll probably be testifying on that, although I haven't been subpoenaed yet. That was a youth case. I don't think that person spent very much time in recreation. The other case that was going on, and it took 4 sheriff's deputies to escort the individual, that 18-year-old, who is being considered for the murder of our Madbury neighbor here, who he wasn't involved in the recreation program here, I don't think either. Before, I think it was 4 deputies, the sheriff himself, and a plainclothes man in an elevator and chains and whatnot. It was pretty serious. That kid was 18, and that was this is a murder case from Madbury. So I think the role that recreation plays, now that there's so many more inputs to our adolescents through peer pressure, through the internet, TV that's gone way beyond the days of Ozzie and Harriet when I grew up in the Lone Ranger. Recreation is, I think, we can't miss this opportunity. And some of you have heard this before, but it has been made clear to me, driving out through Madbury on weekends, to see 400 people in the Madbury field on 125 and 155 in the town hall there. Parents, a concession stand, kids from other towns like Berwick and Epping and whatnot, many as 8 teams, all playing what appears to be middle school. I think they're up to 14 in that program. Half of the people there, of course, come from Durham, or come from the district, I'm sorry. And what I want to see is the school system, the high school particularly, where things start to come together for kids. They start coming into their own. I want to see the school have the opportunity to attract these kids with what they've been doing over the summer. There's now going to be athletics, there's going to be other programs than just baseball. and get the spirit that they've developed over the summer, the buy-in from the parents, and give the school an opportunity to capture that and build on it. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Lauren Selig, and I live here in Durham. And I have to say, I love watching the kids in the middle school and high school come running past my house through the woods up behind my house. My dogs love it, and despite their noise, they actually like the kids too. So I have a couple of questions about the finances specifically. And so you'll have to forgive me, I was an English teacher, not a math teacher for a reason. But looking at all the numbers here and listening to the presentation you gave at the Durham Town Council Monday night, my understanding of the $300,000 from Monday night was that that was all funds that had been privately raised. And maybe that's the case, but it wasn't clear with some of what you said tonight. I almost wondered if part of that was money that's from previous boards allocating it to that fund. And so I just want to get clear on specifically where does that $300 come in from?
The $300,000 that is from two expendable trust funds created by the school district in 1998. One is called Track Fund District Support, and the other one is called Track Fund Private Donations. On 3 separate occasions in the year-end fund balance, warrant articles were proposed to the voters for amounts ranging from one, I think the largest was $50,000, and the voters chose to use some of the year-end fund balance in 3 separate occasions to create what was in one of those funds. The other fund, which is the private donations, is the one that has been, it's in the neighborhood of $180,000, and that is the money that has been entirely privately raised by the Friends of Worship and Cracker.
Okay, so 180,000 is private donations and 120,000 is district money that was taxpayer money specifically designated towards this previously.
Actually, no. I'm sorry to be confused. There is another, Fort is in possession of another $23,000, which is also going into to make the 180 up to 200. So I believe Sue might be able to give you the exact number. I want to say it's 110 is in the district side, and then the rest is in the private fundraising side. But do you happen to know the exact balances? Okay.
So keeping that in mind and just making sure I'm clear on all the numbers here. And so doing the math here, I see that there's calculations out for 5 years about the impact on the tax rate that adds up to about $930,000 if my calculator was accurate. Right, and that's the first 5 years, which is a lot short of the 1.7 million remaining. And that's if we get the bond percentage at 3.746. Okay, sorry, I probably need reading glasses too. So in terms of the projections for the following 5 years and the impact, I guess I'm concerned because I'm looking at the next item on the agenda, which is the school board budget increases. And again, I'm very much in favor of education, and I think you know that about me. But also looking at my own personal tax burden and where my tax bill annually is higher than my mortgage annually, and trying to figure out how long we can truly, as a district, continue to sustain that. And so I'm just trying to get clarification on whether there's potential for going out for grants, whether there's been work towards going out for grants for this, seeking sponsorships in some way so that the burden on us as a tax community isn't so great. And there's other issues, obviously, within our school district as a whole financially, but really looking at the balance of that within this. And so do you have numbers, and do you have any guarantees of the bond rating?
Well, until we actually secure the bond, no, we cannot guarantee the bond. The rate that we quoted when we asked for the rate was 3.746. How recently was that, Sue? That was in November. Okay, so we obviously, whatever the rate is at that time is what we would pay.
May I ask that by the deliberative session, you maybe see if you can get that updated so we have a more accurate figure?
Absolutely. The other thing to keep in mind, because you were talking about the full 10 years of the bond, obviously what's shown on the slide is the first 5 years. The second year is the highest impact on taxes, and then it progressively gets less and less and less. The total cost of the bond is $2,055,583. Okay, so over that 10 years, that's what the taxpayer would be paying. So basically, it's $355,000-ish in interest over the 10 years. Okay. The second question you asked, which was about had we attempted other grants, and the answer is we absolutely have. We have tried all the various athletic companies. I won't name them by names. I don't want to plug in corporate sponsorship. We've written grants to them. We've written grants to the United Way. We've written grants to multiple other agencies. The response that we have gotten consistently has been, this is a public project. It should be funded as a public project. And so we have unfortunately not been able to secure grants, and that has been the response we've gotten. When we reconvened the various people to kind of reevaluate the project, we did actually spend a great deal of time looking at fundraising possibilities. And certainly one of the components which our intention is to privately fundraise another $500,000, which would hopefully do the enhancements of the site. None of that would be coming out of the taxpayers. So really our goal long term is to have a project that is really, the value is going to be more like 2.4 or 2.5 million for the $1.7 million bond. So can I stand here right now and say to you, Lauren, I absolutely will have $500 million raised within the next year? No, I can't do that. But I can assure you that once we have the bond passed, that will be the end of public funding requests for capital investments in this site, and everything from that point forward will be privately done.
Okay. Also, if at some point you have a projection of the actual per year savings from reduction in providing fertilizing, lawn mowing, et cetera, it would be really helpful to have those numbers so that we can look at whatever might offset some of the, just like I balance my checkbook by looking at what do I have to pay for oil and how much can I spend on food this month, to know, well, the price of oil just went down, hugely. So sure. It would be helpful to know where that breaks down with this.
Two things, and you asked great questions. We've written those down. We will update those on our website. We'll get that information. We'll put that up on orbobcats.com. Feel free to check back, and we'll also have it ready at the bond hearing, at the deliberative session, on February 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
David Taylor, Durham. I want to say that I'm a very strong supporter of this project. I served on the board for the previous 3 attempts that Todd referred to, and I would like to amplify what Todd said, that during the process, serving on the many committees, trying to get the various things, we talked with everybody. We talked with Madbury and tried to work out Tibbetts Field before it was developed. We tried to work with Lee before the Little River Field was developed to see if we could do some joint work. We looked at other sites off Packers Falls. We looked at sites in Madbury where the orchard was. We tried to look, is there anything in this area that we could do? It's just not there. We've tried, 18 years have been working on this, trying to find a place to put the fields. Even if the fields are off-site, working with the towns, they're not going to be a turf field. You're not going to be able to use them for PE. There are transportation issues with that. I mean, there just really isn't another better project than what this is. So, education is about the whole child. Athletics, PE are a very important and integral part of educating kids. You can't just do book learning. You've got to have the art. I mean, you've got to do the whole thing. So we really need to support this. Thank you.
I'm Wayne Burton. I'm a resident of Durham. I sit on the Durham Town Council. I represent Durham and Madbury in the state legislature, which has been an interesting experience because most people in this state regard Oyster River's school system as absolutely first rate. But the truth is we have at best a third-rate athletic facility. And to match the quality of the school system itself with an athletic facility that matches what our expectations are, I think we really need this project badly. I actually have been here longer than Dennis Harrington. And that's a long time, Dennis.
I remember digging post poles out at Madbury with Joe Moore and others when ORYA built the soccer fields for ORYA. And at the time, or fighting for the original money for Woodbridge Field, which is now finally getting an allocation from Durham to be picked up. But I also want to say that when I was growing up, and I never talk about this much, I was headed the wrong direction somewhere around 7th and 8th grade, and I started playing high school sports, football, basketball, whatever it was, and I got into a whole different thing, pride in the school, I got to respect myself, and it was a real life changer for me. And I think, and I'm not talking about the kids that go to the Olympics and the rest of it, but just the experience of working with other kids, with an adult, is really a life-changing experience. But our fields really aren't even safe, I don't think. And I would urge the voters in the district to support this project because it's a one-time investment for many, many years of benefiting the children in the Oyster River school system. We heard about the project before the town council the other night. We don't necessarily take a vote on that, but I think my colleagues it was well received. There's never, ever a good time to bring in a bond issue, okay? There's no good time. Boy, the voters in this town are really ready to vote for a bond now. That's never happened. But we have to do it, and it's not a bad time to do it. Both the town of Durham and the Oyster River school system have kept their budgets down below inflation just about. And so I would urge the voters in the district to support the school board and make this project a reality for Todd and the rest and the schools, the kids that use the school system. Thank you very much.
Other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll adjourn the bond portion of this meeting. Alexander, you wanted to have ready to go ahead? Okay.
Yeah, all set.
Okay, you really asked for a break, but we'll go right into the presentation of the budget. Dr. Morris?
One piece of data that Todd and Corey failed to tell you was 73% of our students participate in school athletics. That's an unheard of number of participants in a public school athletic program, so congratulations to the high school on that. So tonight, in addition to the bond hearing you just had, we'll be doing our public hearing on the budget, and we'll be talking about what the school board's goals were for the year, district highlights and accomplishments, our enrollment over the past 3 years, our projection over the next 4 years, and our current enrollment by town as well as by school. We'll provide you some financial information and a review of the warrant articles. So the board establishes goals just like the towns do related to the budget. The most significant goal, and you all have hard copies of this, so I'm not going to read through these word by word. The most important goal of the list of 5 is really the goal that the board set for the overall growth in the budget. So I do want to just take the time to read this particular one for the public because it really summarizes where we are as a district. Given that the district has over $3 million in unmet capital needs, that the technology plan is only 66% implemented, that the bus fleet rotation needs to continue, that negotiations with our bus drivers and paraprofessional staff will incur fixed costs, that text and academic resources must be replaced in a predictable rotation. ORCSD will strive to keep the 2015-16 operating budget to 3% or less. This goal does not include cost increases or shifts from the state of New Hampshire beyond local control, and it does not include separate warrant articles, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The other 4 goals are important, and the board discussed them, but we really felt goal 1 captured where the district was. In addition to the financial goals, the board also sets goals for the system for the school year. And one of those goals really impacts the budget, which is the establishment of a 5-year capital improvement plan. The board felt that this was a critically important goal because of the fact that historically we have not been able to raise the funds necessary to keep our facilities at the level that they should be. And when I came in 2.5 years ago as superintendent, we had over $4 million worth of unmet capital needs. You know, I'm glad to say that we're less than $3 million now, but that's a big hurdle to get through. So a 5-year capital improvement plan that allows the public and the board to be able to predict what our budgetary needs are is pretty critical. We have a middle school that was opened in the mid-30s. If you have middle school students or if you've had middle school students at our facility, it is pretty tired. And when I came in, we had done a facilities needs study related to the capital improvement needs, which I noted earlier. Of that $4 million of unmet need, fully half of that was just our middle school, $2 million. So I asked the board, and the board supported me in doing an academic feasibility study of the middle school this year, and that study is ongoing as we speak. Really what we're looking at is, does the current middle school meet the academic needs of Oyster River Middle School students? The board also asked for a K-12 math program review, and that fits into that cycle of curriculum updates. They asked for me to update the 2008 full-day kindergarten report, and the staff has been working on that through this school year. And finally, to complete and adopt a strategic plan. So up to this point, you know, public would say, well, why is that important, or why is this important in the budget? And really it was through conversation with the school board, through conversation with administrators, through conversation with staffs, this is probably something we should be working on. The strategic plan makes it very, very clear what the board's goals are for the system. It's clear to the staff what we'll be working on, and most importantly, it's clear to the public who are not participants in the school system, who are people who are paying taxes to support it, but really don't have a lot of time spent in the facility, in the schools, with our teachers, with our administrators, trying to figure out what it is we do. The strategic plan lays it out very, very clearly. So I'm pleased to say that this particular budget is the first budget based on an adopted strategic plan. One of the people who came up to the microphone earlier praised the school system. It is an excellent school system. This particular year, really by happenstance, not that we went out and strived to be recognized, but we were recognized by outside agencies, and I really think it's important to share that with the community, because when we ask for money, the next question following that is, well, can you demonstrate that we're getting a return on our investment? Really, this slide is showing the return on the investment. So our high school was ranked 3rd in the state out of 17 high schools by a website called niche.com. The high school was named on the AP honor roll for the 2nd consecutive year. What that means is more kids are taking AP exams and their aggregate score is higher than the previous year. So kudos to the high school. The high school was ranked the 110th best high school in the country by Newsweek. Now, you know, when Todd comes up to the podium and shares all this with the school board, he'll often say, well, you know, people will debate, you know, this, that, or whatever about these recognitions. But my response is, better to be recognized and be at the top than be questioning why you're at the bottom. So regardless of who's honoring us, whether it's AP, Niche, Newsweek, say thank you very much, because that's how we feel about the school system. It's nice to have others validate how we feel. And one highlight that I failed to put in this slide that I want to mention tonight is Oyster River High School for 4 years in a row, 4 years in a row, has graduated every single student. That is a remarkable accomplishment, and kudos to the high school staff. Our middle school and elementary schools aren't sitting back letting the high school get all the laurels. Our middle school deliberately, purposefully seeks accreditation from the New England League of Middle Schools. Pleased to report that they have been so honored. Most middle schools in the country don't do that. It's a lot of work. A lot of credit goes to our administration and teachers for seeking that recognition. And along with the high school, niche.com ranked our middle school the 4th best in New Hampshire. So again, an outside agency looking at us saying we're doing a good job. Our elementary schools consistently rank in the highest tier in English, language arts, and math. And niche.com recognized our elementary schools as well. They ranked the Massway Elementary School number 5 and the Mohammed School number 6. So one organization put all 4 of our schools in the top of New Hampshire. And I noted that this was the year that we adopted the strategic plan. It's no small accomplishment. And I want to say that this district reached out to all 400 employees for participation in the development of this plan. So it means 400 people actually sat at the table and wrote it. But they were representatives from every category of employee, from our teachers, to our support staff, to our bus drivers, to our maintenance people, to our custodians. Everybody had a hand in putting this strategic plan together, and it's a pretty awesome document for the first time out. We have made a significant dent in our unmet capital needs. We're now less than $3 million. We've met about 25% of our goal. We still have a ways to go. And our enrollment projections really show the district is stable in enrollment for the next 4 years. So let's talk about enrollment just for a second. So I just thought I'd capture the last 3 years. We go back 3 years, we were just above 2,000 students. We go back 2 years, creeped up a little bit. We were up to 2,013 students. Then something kind of magical happened in 2013-14, and we were up to 2,058 students. The Long Range Planning Committee shows that in the upcoming years, we'll actually grow for 15-16 and 16-17, and we'll reach 2,078 students and 2,079 students, and then we begin a gentle decline in 17-18 and 18-19, but still hovering right around the 2,000 student level. The reason I share that is it's really important to understand that for all the conversation about declining enrollment in the district, this district has actually had stable enrollment for the last 3 years, and is projected to have stable enrollment for the next 4 years. So it's been a 7-year run where we thought we would be seeing a dramatic decrease in enrollment. In fact, it's been hovering right around 2,000 to 2,100 students for a while. Which isn't to say it won't decline, because the Long Range Planning Committee numbers are demonstrating a decline in our elementary numbers, even as I'm doing this presentation. It's modest, but it's beginning to happen. I thought we'd take a look at the enrollment by school for this year, just to give you a sense of where the children are. At Massway, we're at 286 students, Mohammed 411 students, the middle school 679 students, and the high school's at 719 students. Now, I put a couple asterisks to the total, 2,124 students, because this does include 87 tuition students, most of whom are Barrington, and it does include 29 preschool students. But the question often asked is, well, how does it look when you look at the towns? Because, you know, the funding formula is based on the number of children each town sends and their valuations, the 50-50 funding formula. So in terms of Durham, you would expect it would be the largest town with the most students, and indeed it is, 940 students. Lee really is not, is a close second at 686 students, and then Madbury, being a much smaller community, has 382 students. And we have 87 Barrington tuition students. So slicing the enrollment in a whole bunch of different ways to give you a sense of where the district is in terms of our enrollment. When we look at our budget decreases, You know, we've been in negotiations with all of our unions over the last 3 years, and one of the goals of the board was to decrease the health insurance costs across all the units. I'm pleased to say that the board has been successful in doing that. We've negotiated a $21,358 savings in the paraprofessional contract. We're doing that by offering a higher deductible plan and by asking employees to participate more in the pharmacy costs. So now we can say, as a district, that all of our health insurance plans are pretty reasonable in terms of district and employee participation. Next slide is one of those slides where Al wants to shoot me because there's too much information on the page. But as I told him, you all have hard copies, so it's not that bad. What we're doing as a school system, what the board is proposing, is that the operating costs of the district go up 2.8%. Now, you can see by cost center who went up and so forth, but that 2.8% also includes increased staffing, largely at the high school. I also would be remiss if I didn't point out that this will be the first year in all the years that we'd be receiving tuition dollars that we're actually going to use some of that new revenue to pay for staff. So up to this budget year, 100% of our tuition dollars was being used to offset community taxpayer costs. This particular year, we do need additional staffing. As I said, most of it is at the high school. We're asking for an increase in the math department by 0.6 teacher, basically a little bit more than half. A science teacher, 0.4, a little bit less than half. World language teacher, 0.4. We're asking for the ability to contract service in early childhood. So those are the high school positions. The other place that we would like to increase the budget is in our strings music program by validating a decision we had to make this year, which was to hire a contracted service provider to support the strings program. The strings program is brand new to the district. All of our estimates and research that we did last year when the board created the position is that we would have about 40 strings students. Turned out, as we opened the school year, we actually attracted 80 strings students. So we have a brand new teacher, and we need to have that teacher have help in order to make sure that all those children get the instruction they need. So that's in the budget. And then the final piece in the budget that's new is IT support position, technology support position. We have a very small support department for our technology and very big need. So as technology becomes part and parcel of what we do as a school system, we really need to have the staff that supports making sure it all works. And then finally, we just needed to bring in a paraprofessional at the elementary school, specifically at Moheramet, for instructional support and technology, which is something we've had at Massway for years. So it was an equity issue. So those positions are included in the 2.8% increase. Then when we start talking about the warrant articles, you've had a very thorough presentation on Article 3, which is the athletic fields. The athletic field upgrade ultimately will add 0.09% to the budget. The bus driver contract, just talking about the bus driver contract for a second, I'm probably getting ahead of myself. But what we discovered when we were negotiating with the bus drivers is our beginning wage was way off the mark. Our bus drivers were being paid over $3 less per hour at the beginning of the wage than surrounding districts, and we needed to adjust that. So it was one of those times where the school board in its negotiating position had to say, look, we need to adjust your pay scale so it's competitive to the market so we can hire drivers. So that adjustment was made in negotiations, and it really is long overdue. And that would add 0.18 to the budget. And then with the paraprofessional contract, the last couple times out, they really got hit hard by the recession of 2008. In the last negotiations, they froze their salary. Sounds great, You think, well, that's very conscientious of them, great negotiations by the board. The unfortunate part of that, the unforeseen circumstance is, as we were hiring new staff into the district, and the paraprofessional staff, we were actually hiring new staff at higher wages than our people who had been with us for years. So the board really had to correct that situation as we did negotiations as well. So the major increases in the budget really are those new staffing positions I alluded to. Then the state shift. The state has shifted retirement costs, continues to shift retirement costs. This is the third budget I presented as superintendent. It's the second time that the state has shifted a significant amount of money from their responsibility, shifting it to the school system, and that's the retirement cost. That's about $260,000 worth of shifting. And then the second year of a negotiated contract with our teachers. Again, not a particularly wonderful slide to be showing through the projector, but one that gives you a sense of what the overall impact is to the towns. I would say that it breaks it right down by town. You can see that the operating budget would have a 0.40 impact on Durham per thousand, 60 cents at Lee and 25 cents in Madbury. You carry that all the way down. What would ultimately happen is that if all the warrants passed, this budget would have an impact of 3.15% increase. So then that seems like a lot, because I always get, why is it higher than inflation? So I looked at it from a historical perspective. If you look at the last 4 years, you'll see what the district has been. A negative 2.3% increase, a 0.07% increase, and then 2 years of 1.8. Clearly, all of those years were below inflation. If you take the 3.1 and average that out over the 5 years, you're literally at about 1% increase. So, this is, Wayne talked about the fact the district has kept itself pretty tight. You can't continuously do that and meet the needs that you have. So occasionally you have to step outside the inflation rate. So I want to take just a minute to talk about the warrant articles. You've had a very exhaustive warrant article explanation on 3, so I don't think I need to go there again. That's the athletic field reorganization. Article 4 is the one that talks about our bus drivers. You can see the first year of the impact is $69,147, and that's the adjustment in that beginning wage. And then it settles in at $21,726 and $21,274 for years 2 and 3. Again, negotiating with the bus drivers, they were terrific at the table. We problem solved with them. The board, I think, did a fantastic job in recognizing that you really have to make sure that you're paying people market, or you're not going to get people. And we continue to struggle in terms of hiring bus drivers. Article 5, it really is it's about the paraprofessional staff. Again, we were trying to correct a historical issue where new people were being paid more than people who had, committed themselves to Oyster River. When you're in tough budget negotiations, sometimes freezing things makes sense, but eventually you end up paying the piper, and the piper that we had to pay was literally new people coming in at a higher wage than senior people. So the board corrected that, as well as adjusted the health insurance costs. So the first year of that negotiated agreement is $135,624. Second year, $121,343, and the third year, $84,600. I again would be remiss if I didn't say how absolutely terrific the paraprofessionals were in negotiations and how focused the board was in making sure that we were paying people what they should be paid in order to keep them. Article 6 is a new concept that the board would like the community to consider, and it's a benefit stabilization fund. The way that I would articulate what this warrant article is all about is going back to the issue of the state shifting costs. So 2 years ago, the state shifted $660,000 worth of retirement costs to the district. This year, it's $260,000 of cost shifting to the district. And annually, the district lets a certain amount of money go back to the towns as taxpayer relief. The problem is the amount of money that's going back to the towns for taxpayer relief is pretty minuscule. And there are times when circumstances develop, like the shifting of costs or increased cost in health insurance. I've experienced in my career 20% increases in health insurance. When those kinds of exorbitant costs come into the budget, elected officials like the school board are really in a quagmire of what do we do about this? Because those costs become so high that they have a couple of choices. One is pass that whole cost off to the taxpayer. Politically not a very popular thing to do. The second one is to cut staff or cut programming. Again, politically not a good thing to do. Or the third option is to do both. You know, a little bit of splitting the baby with the bathwater. This particular warrant article, if it is supported by the community, really acts as an insurance policy to unforeseen dramatic increases in costs. Doesn't get spent annually. It gets spent when it's needed. So this would be a warrant article, if supported by the public, that you would see several more times into the future so that this fund could be built up. And it's not about raising new tax dollars. This would be funded by tax dollars that have already been raised. So the concept behind warrant article 6 is really a benefit stabilization fund that would hopefully come to the help of the district and taxpayers at a time when we need it the most. Then warrant article 7 is not moving forward. Okay, so warrant article 7, we're close to the end anyway, is really the summation warrant article which captures all the costs of the district to date. We'll take a break while Alex does his magic. Thanks. That was Alex Taylor, by the way, the guy that keeps me looking sane when I'm using technology. Warrant Article 7 is the summative warrant article. It basically adds all the numbers together and asks the voters to appropriate an operating budget of $39,454,621. It also asks the voters to approve Fund 21, Fund 22, and Fund 23, food service and federal grants, and also demonstrates to the voters if the budget failed, what the default budget would be. So boards asked me to make sure that people understand this really clearly. If, for some unknown reason, our budget failed, we'd go to a default budget. The default budget is based on the operating budget. Fund 21, 22, and 23 would not be impacted by a failed warrant article 7, only Fund 10. So the difference would be a $38,858,410 budget as opposed to the proposed $39,454,621 budget. So we're at that place where I'd be glad to answer your questions. I do have my administrative staff here. Before we do that, I just want to put up the slide about important dates. You can see we've already presented to the town of Lee, we presented to the town of Durham. Next week we present to the town of Madbury. The next major meeting is February 3rd, which would be our deliberative session 1. And then, of course, deliberative session 2 is actually voting day, which is March 10th. So at that, Mr. Chair, I entertain questions. Questions?
I
Hi, Lauren Selleck from Durham again. I just want to say we have the best bus driver ever who drives my route. He is, I think, probably the hardest working bus driver, Richard Joy, in the district. He does a full high school run, I think, from the farthest reaches of the district, and then comes to do a Mohammed run. And we have 57 students on our bus, 57, of whom 16 are fourth graders, who all want to sit in the 3 seats in the very back of the bus every day, both ways. And he deals with all sorts of joyful nonsense with all of that. And so, you know, in my opinion, he alone deserves $1 million daily for what he does. But in addition, I drive several students to other events, as parents tend to do. And the other children, we were talking about him today, we're talking about what a wonderful man he is. He knows every one of those 57 students by name. He knows their siblings who are not yet in elementary school, and makes them all feel wonderful. So in terms of supporting the bus driver portion of this, I think that's fantastic.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Danielle Heaton. I'm from Madbury. I'm an early entry parent into Oyster River. We moved here quite a few years ago before we had kids in, and I have a child now in the PEP program. So statistically speaking, my family is one of those 29 members for the PEP program. I'm at a very different level of parent conversation throughout the community, and I've called the school trying to find information, and I've spoken to other parents as well who's trying to find information. And I saw it mentioned here in the slides, but I'm going to ask for expanded information on where's the kindergarten full-day program standing.
Great.
And I'm a strong supporter in believing in the schools, but like everybody else says, we all have personal budgets that we have to work with. And my only fear is, how often can you go back and tap the well? And there's lots of problems. I've been trying to attend school board meetings. As you saw, I came in about 8 o'clock after I got my own kids to bed. But I'm at a very different angle, and I understand the means across the whole school, but I'm struggling right now because literally weekly the conversation comes up in our circle of other parents that we interact with, and we can't find the information. And I think finding that information also helps us to understand how the school's structured, what we're seeing in the future years to come, and helps to make decisions on how many times are we going to tap that well. Not that we don't want to support, because I agree, like, the school district is phenomenal. The interactions we've seen between our own children and the neighborhood kids, the bus drivers that we see and interact with because we stand out and talk while kids are getting on the bus, is beyond exceptional. But we all have to come down and ask ourselves hard questions, so.
Sure. Thank you for the question. We actually took the 2008 full-day kindergarten report off the webpage because it was so dated. We have been meeting with our kindergarten staff as well as parent participants throughout the fall and winter, and we'll have an updated report by the end of February that will be reposted. The goal from that report, releasing a little bit of the conversation, is that we would not have the space in our elementary schools to go to full-day kindergarten in the next school year, but we fully anticipate making a proposal to the school board for 2016-17 because the space should be available. It may be there will be some compromise in the space in terms of Massway and Mohammed location of students, but we should be in a position that we can make a recommendation to the school board for 2016-17.
And I'm guessing that more information will be found out in February, obviously, so that's a good thing because I will definitely spread the word that I've got that authoritatively now. Many topics have come up about it because I know in the past, I think it was 2 years ago if I recall correctly, so I was trying to remember, it was presented in a co-share, like the families that would be participating in it would be helping to split the cost. Is there any known whether that's going to be proposed again, or will it be 100% taxpayer funded?
Yeah, we had a pretty powerful public forum around that whole concept.
I remember that. I was here that night.
I think it came down to If full-day kindergarten is a critical component of the public school education, just like the high school, the middle school, and the elementary, then it should be part of the operating budget. So
Okay.
there wouldn't be, in the proposal, I can say, from my perspective right now, there would be no request for parent participation, just be a part of our operating budget.
Okay, well, thank you, I appreciate that. The last question I guess I have is, I know I've reached out to the school to ask how I can get involved in supporting the community and trying to talk about the topic in the community. I'm guessing the message somehow got lost through translation because I never heard back. How can parents that want to actively try to partake in these discussions and support for this, where can they go?
Well, the first thing I would say to you is that the report will be ready either this winter, spring, and then I'll be doing public forums in the 2 elementary schools, and that would be a place where you can engage directly to the report and have a conversation with me. And then ultimately, if you want to be participating in the conversation, all you can do is let me know and we'll make sure we get you engaged.
Okay. Again, I apologize. I know it's indirectly related to the budget, but it helps to understand what's coming to make decisions appropriately financially.
And it's right in our strategic plan and the board goals. So
Right, and
we're
that's
being
why-
very bold about it. And so we're telling the community we're rejecting out. This is something that is coming down in a very immediate way. It's not the next budget, but the budget after.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I had one question. I'm Dean Revine from Lee. I'd like to hear more about the retirement cost shifting. Actually, my recollection from 2 years ago was the number was originally 500,000, shifted from the states, and then I think that got reduced closer to 400,000 when the retirement incentives were counted.
Well, our recollections are different. So I recall it being over 600,000 2 years ago. But I will check
Oh, I thought
that.
you said 200,000 earlier.
This year. This year it's 260,000.
And you think it was 600,000?
I will check, Dean, and get back to you.
Do you know the story behind that? Is that
Yeah, the state of New Hampshire for decades asked for a pretty nominal contribution from employees, and that is not, and their contribution as a state was pretty nominal as well. And so basically the state in the immediate past, the last several years, has said, well, we have to make up for this. And what they've done is they've created a pretty heavy contribution by employees and shifted the cost of the retirement system to the local school systems. And that's happening, of course, throughout New Hampshire. That's not unique to us. So basically they have an unfunded liability that they're trying to fund through increasing the contributions by our employees to the retirement system and by shifting the cost to the local communities. Is that do it, Dean?
Not really.
I'll send you numbers from 2 years ago.
Sorry, I got so excited about the bus drivers. I forgot to say the school lunch program should have been on your list of accolades because our school lunch program has also won awards. And my 4th grader eats lunch at school, I think 4 days a week now, which saves me endless time and hassle. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
In our food lunch program, you're absolutely right, was recognized by the federal government, and Doris Demers, our food director, got a very personalized letter from the First Lady commending our efforts in the district. So kudos to our food service program.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll call this budget forum, budget hearing to conclude. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Hey, Dean.
I did.